So weird, so odd, and such a failure. I love it. The Wii U gets a pretty bad rap. It's a weird console, it didn't sell a lot of units, the Wii is better, the Switch is better, it's just a weird little child in between. But I like it, and that's why we're here. So without further ado, let's get into why you should buy a Wii U, or whatever the title for this video is. After the success of the Wii, Nintendo wanted to capture the attention of the casual market once again. But the big question was, how are they going to do it again while still being original? Nintendo's attempt to answer this question was Project Cafe, a codename for what eventually became the Wii U. Did they achieve that goal? Not really. The Wii U released in 2012 and nobody knew what it was about. In press conferences, Nintendo basically only showed the gamepad and didn't have a whole lot to say about it, which left people confused. Was this just an accessory for the Wii? Is this just a revision of the Wii? Is it its own thing? Nobody knew. So it's obvious people weren't exactly comfortable with giving money to something that they didn't really know the purpose of. I myself remember seeing the Wii U on TV, in the news or something, where they showcased how one person could play on the gamepad and others could play on the TV, and I thought that was pretty interesting. I asked my parents for one, they said no, and I completely forgot about it. I was 6 at the time, so I couldn't really distinguish GBA games from Wii U games. It all looked the same to me, so since I had the former, I didn't care too much about other systems.
So here it is, the Wii U itself. Not that, that's the gamepad, very common misconception, but we'll get to that later. So it's just like a fat Wii, isn't it? Here's a Wii for comparison, and very similar. Very similar, except one is like twice the size of the other. I have no idea why it's so long. It's not like it has a hard drive or anything in there. Yeah, I don't really have much more to say about the console itself. They made the design pretty boring. They got, HDMI. There's literally nothing more. No GameCube ports. As you'd expect. But it's kind of obvious that they made the console boring on purpose because they wanted to direct attention to the gamepad. And sure enough, it's quite a looker. It's got a lot of stuff. Most of it's pretty unnecessary, like the NFC reader, unless you're super into amiibos, I don't really see a point for that. It's got a IR sensor for the TV. If you feel like it. Headphone jack, I actually don't mind that, that's pretty cool. That's around the time other systems started doing it, like the PS4. We have the camera, which doesn't have pretty much any use at all. We also got ourselves a mic, like for the gimmicky parts of Mario 3D World, where you have to like blow into the microphone. Then we got the plus and minus buttons, which are at the same time stored in select for no reason. We see here a return of the X and Y buttons, which hadn't been on the console's main controller since like the Super Nintendo. And yeah, it's nice to see them back. Pretty amazing for SNES Virtual Console. It's basically one of the main reasons I bought this for. And we got these sorta comfortable grip spots and this little thing that doesn't really have any use, but it's a sort of handle, I don't know. And now we gotta talk about the two things I don't like a lot about this gamepad. These shoulder buttons and the screen. Let's start with the shoulder buttons. They're cheap. They are pretty cheap, and it's not really something I'd expect from Nintendo. However, I can kind of see Nintendo's point of view because, well, they definitely needed to cut costs on this. I wasn't really thinking about talking to software right in this little IRL section, but I thought it would be a good idea to at least talk about the home menu, which is basically only accessible through the gamepad. I definitely prefer the 3DS one, but it's not the end of the world. This one is pretty similar. It's got folders, it's got little modern sort of icons, while still keeping the Wii-like aesthetic. And after all, it still has that sort of 2010s Nintendo charm with this sort of round and glossy theme to it, as well as a little bouncy tune in the background, so it's not too far off from what the 3DS was doing at the time. The Wii U definitely gets some points in personality, and since I'm kinda lazy to go ahead and plug everything to my TV, we could take a look at the Wara Wara Plaza right now, which is this little part of the system. It's not exactly the home menu, but it's still pretty interesting. It's just a bunch of the applications and some Miis around it, most of which have something to say. And in the center, you'll usually find your own Mii just wandering around, and he's always got something to say. So yeah, a lot of eShop and Miiverse options, all of which are gone now, so this part of the screen, basically useless. You can still save the Mii though if you feel like it, including the sort of default ones out here. From what I know, this was way more alive because some of your friends and just more information in general would appear here when the eShop and Miiverse was, well, alive. But with that gone, all you have is these sort of default messages. Back then you could even see some drawings from the people on Miiverse and some interesting posts, so it's kind of a bummer that's gone. So yeah, that's basically all there is to say about the hardware. It's not super special, and it may have been one of the reasons the console didn't seem as interesting or appealing to the general public, but in my opinion, what really shines in the Wii U, it's not its quirky gamepad design or ridiculously long console, it's more what lies on the inside, software-wise. So, it's time to talk about what this has to offer. Games.
I could spend hours just yapping about all of the great games this console has to offer, but I'll instead just yap about a few of my favorites so far. And I'd like to start with Mario Kart 8, the flagship racing game for this system, and one of the best ones Nintendo put out, like, ever. It's a beautiful mix of content and polish and just everything in between. It's a great package is what I'm trying to say. I currently still prefer Mario Kart 7, but that's mostly nostalgia talking, as I believe I will soon start preferring Mario Kart 8 more and more, as it's superior in basically every aspect. Next up we have Super Mario Maker, arguably the Wii U's killer app. There hardly is anyone who hasn't heard about the concept of Mario Maker, that being a game where you create levels and play levels created by other people. And this is the first installment in the series. You can create levels, play some pre-made levels made by Nintendo, play a bunch of levels made by users, and play other modes like the 100 Mario Challenge, where you have 100 lives to complete a bunch of user-generated levels. The concept is simple, but the opportunities are endless, so even if you can't upload levels anymore, there's still so much you can do in this game. If you bought a Nintendo console, there's one thing you'll definitely play, and that's a Mario game. Not a spin-off Mario game like Mario Kart or Mario Maker, I mean an actual Mario game. Collecting coins, saving the princess, you know. And Mario 3D World is the perfect example of that. Like the previous games, it has this insane amount of polish and quality to it, and it's a pretty entertaining game that can bring you hours of fun, whether by yourself or with a friend or two. This game introduces the Bell power-up, which turns Mario and the other characters into cats, which brings a pretty cool twist to the usual Mario games. Next up we have Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Instead of just being called Donkey Kong Country Returns something like the two other games, Tropical Freeze doesn't need to tell anyone, hey, I'm a new Donkey Kong Country game after like 20 years. People already know that. And what this game brings is something you wouldn't exactly expect from a game set in the jungle, but it truly makes it unique, interesting, and above all, entertaining. And that being the whole hold and freeze thing. If you're into Donkey Kong Country games or you want to get into the series, this is a game I highly recommend. But if you want to play the more classic Nintendo platformers, New Super Mario Bros. U is something you might be into. The New Super Mario Bros. Series basically consists in bringing the gameplay style from the classic Mario games and revamping the graphics and introducing mechanics found in the 3D games, as well as its own things. The new thing in this game being the Super Acorn power-up, which turns you into a flying squirrel. The New Super Mario Bros. Series has been a target of a lot of criticism in the latest years, as its games just seem to become more and more repetitive, but that doesn't mean they're not fun. Once again, you should totally play this one. Last but not least on my little list of favorite Wii U games, we have The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. That's a Switch game, you might say. Well, no, not really. It came out on the Wii U and the Switch on the exact same day, and there is so much I can say about Breath of the Wild. It's one of the most beautiful and immersive experiences I've ever had the chance of playing. It brings everything good from the Zelda series and makes it a million times better. And it all results in this amazing world you're put into and the amazing story surrounding it. Whenever I boot this game, I have the time of my life just wandering around and finding new things. For example, I don't even know how to make fire yet, but I'm having fun just trying to figure it out without looking up walkthroughs or anything. It's just fun to discover things on your own, and when you discover those things, the game just makes it all seem so rewarding that it makes you want to discover more and more things. Sadly, the Wii U version isn't the best. The frames can drop on some occasions, and the graphical quality is a little bit worse than it is on the Switch. But if that doesn't really matter to you, then this is a great way to play this amazing game. The Wii U's Virtual Console is arguably the best out of all Nintendo consoles. Not really because of the library, in fact it doesn't have as many games as I would want it to, but instead it's mostly because of the gamepad's controller layout, which, unlike the Wii or GameCube, can play most retro games in a super comfortable way from the get-go without you having to get special controllers or anything. SNES games look amazing, GBA and DS games feel right at home on the gamepad, and N64 games play like a charm. The only complaint I have is that N64 and NES games are super dark for some reason. There are some other systems besides the ones I mentioned like TurboGrafx and some of the Ataris, so if you're into that older or more obscure part of the gaming world, the Wii U's got you covered. When you start talking about the Wii U and its software, it's almost impossible to not mention the eShop, Nintendo's digital shop. Along with the 3DS, the Wii U's eShop was the first one to let you download full games, not just smaller games like WiiWare or DSiWare, and this made it an incredible part of the system. As the 2010s were around the time everyone started transitioning from physical to digital content. But that wasn't all. The eShop might have had cool functionalities and all, but people loved it because of the aesthetic, the way everything was organized, the bouncy music, even the little minigame while the shop was loading. Just like a real shop, Nintendo made the eShop so that you wanted to stay there and you wanted to spend money there, and they definitely fulfilled that task. But another service Nintendo wanted you to be a part of was Miiverse, Nintendo's first and only social media service, unless you count PictoChat or SwapNote. Miiverse was the Nintendo social media service, just a place for you and fellow Nintendo fans to hang out, say some funny stuff, draw something, and talk about games. It was a really charming place. I myself had the opportunity to live the last months of it since I had my 2DS a few months before it shut down in early 2017. It's pretty sad that Miiverse is gone. It's one of Nintendo's decisions that I dislike the most, and I'm sure I'm not the only one with that opinion. But thankfully, we'll all keep the memories, and well, there are some replacement services like Pretendo's Juxtaposition and Arverse, which try their best to recreate the feeling of Miiverse. At last, another notable service the Wii U had was Wii U Chat. I honestly don't know much about it because the service is completely gone, just like Miiverse and the eShop, but it was basically just a place for you to do video calls with people. The folks at Pretendo are also trying to revive this service, but we can't talk about dead services without talking about the dead console. The Wii U didn't have the best lifespan out there, with it being more or less 5 years until the Switch released. And when the Switch released, the Wii U just faded into obscurity as its successor was superior in nearly every aspect. But that isn't to say that everyone forgot about the Wii U. It may have been discontinued, and the Switch may be 10 times more popular, but the Wii U, even to this day, still has a loving community, most of it being related to the homebrew and modding side of it. These being fans of the console who develop new things to it, like special firmware, recreations of dead services, and just interesting stuff. Modding your Wii U is, like for other old consoles, a must in this modern age. I recommend modding it with Aroma because then you can use Pretendo, which I mentioned a bit earlier, which is just this big replacement service for basically every online aspect of the Wii U, since the official online services are gonna close down in April. You gotta be careful with what videos and which sources you get your homebrew tutorials from, but I highly recommend wiiu.hacks.guide and the videos from Funky Scott, both of which explain everything incredibly well and will get your modded Wii U up and running in no time. So, should you buy a Wii U? Yeah, I think so. Even if you have something like a Switch, there's still a bunch of amazing exclusives on this system, so it's not total garbage. But with all of that said, I think I'm gonna end this video here. I told you basically everything you need to know about the Wii U, as well as some personal opinions about the system. I didn't want to say too much about it because I think it's important for you to have your own experience with the system and your own memories. So yeah, go ahead, buy a Wii U and have those memories. If you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to like and subscribe and share it with people who might be interested. And I wish you all a very nice day and some happy holidays.